Just take one hit. Don't you want to be cool?
Gather round everyone. The show's about to begin.
Turn on, tune in, drop out, this show's amazing. It's Super Lemon Haze, you know them boys always blazing. Put one in the air, fill your glass and get to raising. Kirkman praising, school flag waving. Chopping up the topics instead of choking on some chronic. Scott and Eric breaking it down like 21st century prophets. Eyes glazed and minds dazed, it's knowledge they convey. Roll up and consume the Super Lemon Haze.
Super Lemon Haze.
Going to ask you several questions.
Super Lemon Haze.
How do you feel?
I feel like a slice of butter melting on top of a big old pile of flapjacks. Yeah.
A dog on a chain. You're gonna be good. I know you're excited. That's why I like talking to you now first for a few minutes. Are we recording? Yes, we are. Good. Excellent. This is good. So now I have like what? What time is that?
This is when I run around the house 10 times and
what's the clock? What do we got for clock? What do we
oh,
got?
time. It's
Yeah,
8:24.
Oh, perfect. So yeah, I have like 20 minutes.
20
to
minutes.
fucking mellow you the hell out, and then we'll get into this interview. That's perfect. Super Lemon Haze.
Super Lemon Haze, motherfuckers. Look at me. I'm like in fucking college, graduate school. I got my blap. Got my blap with my blap.
Yeah.
And my blip and my sip.
Yeah, I just picture you like in an old like 50s news conference with like the hat on and the little like notepad in your hat, and you're like, press, sir. Like you're just like going. Like, next question. Read all about it, folks.
She gave me really good advice. I was nervous. I was a little nervous, so I went up there. She's rocking the kid, and I'm like, I'm nervous. She's like, why are you so nervous? I'm like, I don't know. This is probably our biggest.
It's a good one. I don't know if it's the biggest, but it's a good one for sure.
It's a good one. It's up there. And she's like, he's just a dude. Yeah. And that's what it is.
So we have a special emergency weed review.
Oh yeah.
Correct. We had kind of an impromptu. I guess you could say it was a prescription, so to speak.
Yeah.
We've had the diagnosis. We've sort of slowly diagnosed over time. We've talked about the man.
This is my father-in-law, by the way.
So we set this up.
Yeah, we brought this case up a little while ago on one of our long time ago episodes. I think we're up to 18 right now. Holy shit, man. Fucking teen.
Cool.
My father-in-law is a very active cannabis smoker, loves the flower. Due to the COVID-19 a couple months ago, he was very aware that smoking anything could help, inflame the lungs and make him more vulnerable to the disease. And so he decided to make his own edibles, which I highly recommend as long as you follow a recipe of some sort. But he decided to take it upon himself to
make the How High segment, by the way.
Actually, isn't that where it started?
Could make it to the How High segment, or
No.
maybe it was at the How High segment. Yeah.
So yeah, he first steeped it as tea,
Like a tea type of deal.
Like a tea type deal.
It, yeah.
that didn't go well for him. He definitely overdosed. He didn't die because no one has ever died smoking or using cannabis. We know that for sure.
He just wasn't necessarily sharp with it when that happened.
No.
Yeah. And apparently he stunk up the house too.
Yeah.
We found that out
We did.
recently as well.
And then the second time, I think he was trying to use it as a milk to put it in his. So he somehow used cream or something, try to cream it or
He was
something.
trying to get the fat lipids out of it.
Yeah, and then he added it to
butter.
his coffee.
Yeah.
It didn't
That
go too well either.
No. Bummer. And I think the other piece was that he, the stories that I was also hearing just about him getting like weed or getting flour was that he was kind of just meeting some dude in the South End, and it was kind of whatever, just cash in a parking lot, kind of.
Yeah, in a mall parking lot.
And it's a guy you knew. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
But it's not like, it wasn't super sketchy, but it's not exactly like the most not sketchy situation there
No.
either. Like there's some left to be desired there for.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for
professionalism.
me, I mean, it's not the activity. It's more the safety feature, right? So I
Yeah,
mean, like
sure.
if he was just doing it anywhere, I wouldn't care. But the fact that he had to go to like a mall parking lot in like the dark and like do an exchange, like that to me, he's like almost a 75-year-old man. Like
Right.
that's nothing he should be doing.
And then I think the last piece for me was I had heard, I caught a story somehow while on vacation or hanging out somewhere that he's kind of like, sometimes he'll come over and he'll just be kind of like totally out of it. He'll be pretty like really stoned or like really sleepy or something like that. Or appear more stoned. And I'm immediately thinking, okay, so then he must have like gotten into some like lower end on the spec, like some indicas or so. There's a particular strain that's just zonking him and like kind of putting him down and not necessarily making him active. And when he's seeing you guys and seeing family and stuff, he wants to be like buzzed up and good to go.
Yeah, he told me on average he takes about 9 to 10 rips or puffs.
Right.
What do you call it?
Yeah, hits.
Okay.
Inhales. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So I prescribed him a hybrid, sativa hybrid, or a sativa leaning hybrid, I guess you could call it. It was Root 90s, Grow House, Cindy 99. I think it was C99.
Yes.
What was the and what was the
I'm gonna go look it up real quick because I have it on my profile. Hold on. Profile.
What, as far as the notes on it?
Well, no, I took a picture of it. So is that what you're asking about?
I think it was Cindy 99.
Sorry,
pretty sure.
Give me a fucking
just
second.
to confirm.
My fucking whole feed is fucking
I know.
Fire K Marco.
Fire and K Marco.
My whole
and weed.
I'm like going. Yes. So it was Route 90.
Yeah, that was the grow, and then it
was Cinderella 99.
Yeah, Cindy 99.
Yeah.
Cool.
Which is a TAC 20%.
Yeah, so kind of average TAC, not the highest, not the lowest.
Yeah.
And then it's a kind of hybrid leaning sativa. So please talk to me. What was the review?
Yeah, so I called him. So now it's been a couple days since we gave him the stuff, and I was asking him questions like, so what did you feel? Did you feel any different? Because he was completely out of his other stuff, so he wasn't like mixing anything. Right. It was strictly this was the only thing that he had in the house.
Good.
So it was a pretty good summary as to what he felt. So I mean, the bottom line is that he doesn't feel like he like felt any different. So he said like the buzz was almost exactly the same that he felt from the other stuff. I think the one thing that he did feel different about was like the taste, which might make sense. I mean, I guess if something a little bit fresher, like obviously I don't know anything about the cultivation of marijuana, but I think then I asked him, I followed him up, was like, so was that like a better thing? And he's like, it is like, I think he just wants,
doesn't matter. Effect
it doesn't matter.
Matters.
Yeah. So he basically came out of our situation feeling that he has a pretty good dealer. I mean, that's pretty much what he said.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's very good. And he might be the dealer might be, who knows? I mean, that's the whole problem is you just you're not looking at a menu and you're not picking, you're just kind of getting.
Yeah.
So he did not feel like he was passing out. I
didn't really get into
because that's the inconsistency piece.
Yeah. I mean,
concerned about.
I think we just have to ask him a few more questions. I feel like I was just trying to get out of him what he felt different about it. And I think it seemed to me he just felt the same.
Yeah.
So, but when I talked to him, he was clearly high when I spoke to him, and he was very lucid. It wasn't like he was like mumbling or whatever. So it at least made me believe that, maybe it was positive, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it just.
Yeah, I'd like to ask him the direct question in a nice way, of course. Just like, okay, so if you had to have that every single time, is that the kind of high you're looking for?
So what was in there? Like 3.5 grams?
That was an eighth. So
yeah,
3.5 grams. Yep.
Yeah. And I guess I'm
Nothing
just wondering.
Crazy, just a little, just something to figure out if he's interested in it.
Yeah. And that was like $60.
Yeah. I mean, I
so
think it's 55 and then tax. And whatever.
Would you have any idea what an eighth costs on the street right now? Like
similar, always.
Yeah.
No, I remember paying $60 for eighths.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
I was just curious.
If you got a $50 eighth, you were pretty pumped about it back in the day.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, I remember I could get $40 eighths, but they're usually like beasters, like mids from Canada. Nothing great. So
nice.
So yeah, to be able to like kind of pick your own thing, and then I don't mean tax, the ATM fees, the fees just to run the card, obviously. But yeah, just that extra $5 goes a long way if you get to actually pick the kind of high or the taste you're looking for. So.
Yeah. So that was like kind of, I think that's going to be more of the follow up with him, is just maybe get a little bit more information about it, but also tell him about some of the differences, maybe some of the control, maybe just, I mean, I think, because that's the one thing that, I mean, he is obviously doing it for effect. It just seems like that's the case, but If we could at least say to him, it's safer because you're obviously knowing where it's coming from.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, whatever, choose your want. But
Yeah.
if he wants to like take a look at the menu,
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, well, here you go, pick and choose. Is
Right.
this better than this guy? You tell me. I mean,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you got to kind of pick and choose.
Yeah. I mean, I guess obviously in the end, the motivation for us is to make sure that my father-in-law isn't driving to some random parking lot,
Exactly.
doing a deal.
And we're keeping him corralled corralled in more ways than one.
Exactly. We love you, Dad.
And he did ask about some gummies too, like most.
He did.
By the way, last quick topic.
Yeah.
He did say, one of the first things he was mentioning was like, I also would just like to kind of stop smoking altogether.
Yeah.
How do I get into edibles? Because it didn't go well. And then that's where I heard about the stinking up of the house story, which worked out well. So we'll grab him some of those kanji fruit bites or something like that too. Something controlled that's a small dosage.
Yeah. Awesome. So we're looking at a really unique guest that we're bringing on the pod.
Yeah.
He's not here yet, but I feel like we should do a little bit of some
intro exactly what the hell's happening, as you kind of give some background to what you're up to here, what we've got going on here.
It's almost like the game of Clue. I feel like we're just like playing. I feel like we're playing a board game, and we're looking for the right guy with the right weapon in the right room, right? And what I mean by that is, we're dealing with cannabis. Obviously, that's the big word that we're working with. We love it. We appreciate it. We see the value in it, and we really do believe that it could be a major commodity in this state, if not the country, but at least we can think small enough to think it's going to be a major player, tax revenue wise. Job wise in this state. But there seems to be two sides to the game right now. And we're trying to bridge the gap. And, we got on to this conversation with Tom. Unfortunately, we weren't able to play that, as everyone knows, but we were trying to identify what that gap is. And the more and more I read, watch, listen to the people in my mind who are really important in this industry, in Massachusetts, in the cannabis industry, I sort of came up with, I feel like I have the top three. And I think, and I think now, and obviously I want to bring these up now from this interview going forward, because I want to see if people actually agree that these are three major functions of dysfunction in this state around cannabis. And we're going to have someone on from one side. We had Mike Crawford on. We've spoken with Mike and Grant from the Young Jerks, who are from more of the advocacy, from more of the activist side.
They've got several things. I mean, they're kind of on a couple of different topics about and I don't even know if it's necessarily, and you've done a great job of raising the topics and big cannabis and certain things that you've kind of thrown out there with graphics and marketing and with great questions. I think you've done a great job with that, Mr. Producer. Thank you.
Yeah.
But
I do my best.
But yeah, seriously. I mean, they kind of have a couple of different sort of, I don't know, common man, common woman themed thoughts that they're throwing out there, right? They're talking about workers' rights. They're also talking about the lack of diversity or equality in folks that are getting different loans and grants and permissions to do business in the state. So they're sort of pointing out a couple of different things. I don't know what their message is, if it's big versus small or what. He's just sort of what I like about Mike is he's just sort of pointing out bad stuff that he sees in general.
That's definitely his approach. And that was kind of what my interaction with him was today on Twitter, is that, that's been very effective for him. Like
Grant, he's more into the actual, it sounds
policy,
like to me, the policy and the legislative
the lawsuits,
stuff that's been going
the
on.
legalese.
And he's sort of been really harping on, he's got some examples apparently where he really feels strongly how, they've anytime they've had a chance to go to court and represent themselves in the state, they've not supported anything that we've talked about, that they've talked about with regard to, I guess, with regard to economic or any sort of economical or socio development, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think and Mike said this before, but I think Mike really does represent I don't say the voice, but he represents a huge voice, a huge population of people in the community. And I think Mike and Grant, they do an amazing job talking about the issues with both people and policy. But I think in the end for them, it's it seems to me, based on everything that I've watched, read, and learned from the time that I've been doing this with them, is that they're a little bit cloudy in terms of being able to see the opposition in their mind as someone that they can work with. It seems like they've made the decision that these are people, and I'm talking more about corporate cannabis. These are people that only care about profit. They don't care about people. They obviously don't care about anything that's going on in current events with anything race related or social economically related. I just think that they're getting too far to one side, and it's giving them a little bit more of a barrier to talk with who we're going to speak with today, which absolutely. Is the CEO of RevClinics.
Yeah.
And this conversation was born because you and I have been able to maintain
some good balance,
a balance where we discuss the issues. We talk about, we all are in this for the same reason. And I think that's what I was trying to also, I don't know, reassure or.
Well, I'll go ahead and say, so we're not 24,
right,
and trying to fight the world.
Yep.
Not that anybody that we've just spoken about is that. I'm just saying that's kind of like the far side of the spectrum, right?
Yep.
So we're not 24 and trying to fight the world and thinking that everybody needs to be equal, because I think we're sort of grown men. We realize that there's a lot of working hard in the world. We've owned and run businesses and also worked in the corporate world in places and had independence. And I think we can bring a balance, but we also, I think, recognize that diversity and equality and all of these different things are also major factors to bring about a good culture for this industry.
Right.
So we're not 24 and shouting.
That was really well put.
We're not thank you. We're not 24 and shouting at the world, but we're also not some sort of, crooked politician who's lining pockets.
Right.
I don't think we're, I feel like we're kind of fighting in the middle. We're kind of falling right in the middle here. We recognize that some of these things have happened in the past.
Yeah.
We see some things that don't look good on both sides.
Yep.
And we're kind of trying to balance that out and call that out a bit.
Yeah.
So I think what I believe is that this, Mr. CEO of RevClinics here, that when we chat, what I think he'll
staring at that screen, just like, come on, man, pop up. I still feel like there's a chance he's going to bail.
No, I think he'll appreciate. I think why he's talking to you and he's engaged with you, and why Tom engaged with you originally, is because they see that we're giving that balance, and that and we come as business owners and realistic folks. That, not career politicians, not youngsters,
not yet.
That's angry old men. We kind of fall right in the middle. We're not quite angry old men.
I think we're actually kind of crankety old men. Maybe not old. Maybe not.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
Well, anyway, we're gonna keep fucking bullshitting until Keith Cooper comes on. Do you want to talk about the Fire K Marco thing real quick?
We could talk about some Fire K Marco, and then we had some Twitter activity today too, as a backup, as another topic. For you to throw out.
Well, you go first. What's your interpretation of this whole fucking Fire K Marco thing?
I mean, no question. He just doesn't like Steve. I mean, and that's clear. I mean, seeing especially when he gets kind of called out to, it's clear that he's against the show. He's against Steve. There's a complete lack of like respect or even wanting to deal with them. And then he sees something that's going to kind of blow them up and take them down a little bit and be political. And it also sort of aligns with his political thought anyway, because I do think there's a bit of some kind of leftist jab from Keith there. It is what it is. I mean, not to get into the politics. I just think that's kind of his take on that. Like, he's kind of against that a bit, but I mean, sure, throw up Zonker, let's do that, and then kind of blow it off to Dave the way it was set up. I mean, it was set up kind of crooked, to be honest, the way I see it. So
I do agree with you on the sense that I think he does have some level of disrespect for Steve. I also think, I think in general, I think it's just the show. I think it's what the show represents. And I think, because of the way that Kirk likes to address certain issues. I mean, last week was obviously a pretty offensive, day or two with Kirk attacking some of the, righteously so in my mind, for attacking some of their, key podcasters about, posting links for, I don't know, bailing a lot of these people out.
I mean, I thought he was asking legitimate questions though. Like, did you do that research? Did you really look into that stuff? I mean, listen, I can't come on here and say the things that I'm trying to talk about, and you can't come on here and fucking shout at these crazy people about weed policy if we don't do a little bit of research. So I would ask that question, and then he doesn't get anything back. Like, it's not like this kind of boiled for a few days. It wasn't like this all just happened on fucking Sunday and then Zonker did his thing. I mean, this has been going on since basically since the riots and the protests really started. So she had plenty of opportunity. Any of them had plenty of opportunity to be like, no, I looked into this. This is mean, and they nothing. And then he just keeps kind of asking, and then Kirk does his thing, of course. Which, I loved the rundown, by the way. With
all them
basically like
just trying to get him.
Nothing better than when
just dangling
Kirk
that carrot.
Nothing better than when Kirk Minahan's right.
Right, exactly.
As I'm an old KFC fan. So. And a classic rundown with them fucking with each other with the audio too. I don't know if you heard that, but it was so funny.
Yeah,
so funny.
I mean, I guess I heard Kirk spoke with all three. He spoke with Big Cat. I listened to that. It was great. It had KFC and Prez, and I feel like the underlying theme is they weren't going to do anything to K Marco about it, no matter what. And I think, I mean,
it's not that big of a deal to them, unfortunately, to them.
Yeah. But it was a pretty big deal to me because it doesn't make any sense to me. Again, this is sort of like, I guess, when I think about the media and even almost to what we're going to be discussing tonight with Keith, but like there's obviously there was an agenda, right? K Marco didn't even read, he admitted to not even fucking reading the goddamn blog. He only posted it to cause some level of negative reaction toward the show. So here's the man. He's coming in.
Excellent.
That's good to see. Anyway, so fucking K Marco, fuck you. I do hope at some point he does something serious enough to be fired, and that'll be a hell of a day for the Minifans. He was
one of those. It's funny that they all kind of didn't realize, they weren't originally kind of thinking it through, or when it was first starting to happen. But yeah, he's been there. He's definitely, like, I think somebody said, like, on the show recently, does he have equity? Well, big time equity,
100%.
I mean, he was the original. He was hired when KFC was hired.
Yeah, he was just a blogger, right?
He was the New York blogger with KFC.
Right.
Like, basically, what happened was Dave didn't have the money to pay. He only had the money to pay one guy, and it wasn't much money to begin with. And basically, he was like, "You guys are both awesome." They were in a contest to see who was going to be the New York blogger when Boston was going to expand to New York. And they both won, and he's like, I can't pick between the two of you. So they split, like, I don't even know, like 10 grand or something stupid, and then they both wrote blogs in New York and traded off.
So he's
woven in.
He's one of those untouchables, I guess.
Way back in the day.
All right, Keith, I see you're in the room, so I'm gonna try to bring you in here.
I saw him buzz over there for a second.
I did. Keith, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I do. Question: do you want to stay just audio, or do you want to do audio video?
Happy to do video.
All right, let's throw it up. Anyway,
this is where you get to be a producer later.
Exactly. We will never see this part, or maybe we will. Maybe I'll just leave it in because I'm fucking tired of editing.
It could be fun.
All right. If it doesn't work, we'll just take the audio.
We'll go audio if it doesn't work, Keith. No worries.
Keith, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Don't worry about it. I'm not sure what's happening, but I don't want to take up any more of your time.
Yes, sir.
So let's just roll if that's cool with you.
You got it.
Welcome to Super Lemon Haze.
Thanks for joining us, Keith. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
So I first want to address something that happened this week, which was completely shocking and surprising to me because I felt like the effort was there. Unfortunately, it got misinterpreted, and I'm referring to your appropriate Black Lives Matters post on your Instagram. So can you explain what happened with that?
Yeah, so we were all very disturbed by what has been happening, and we sat down with our employees and talked about it. We talked about what we wanted to say, what we wanted to do, and how we wanted to show up as an organization and as a team to our customers, to the people in the community, and so forth. And one of our very creative people, a guy named Gary, who's an executive, happens to be African American, and works in our community outreach program, came up with what you saw on that Instagram. And I thought it was really powerful. I thought it was quiet, but it was meaningful. It was powerful, and I thought it was well sort of produced. And so we put that out there as a team proudly, because we thought that we wanted to show it, and we wanted to make sure that we weren't being quiet on this issue, because we feel very strongly about it. What you're referring to is we got some reaction from a couple of groups or a couple of individuals that felt, or who felt, that it was in conflict somehow with our situation in Cambridge, where we were trying to defend our rights to open our stores that we have in the city.
So can just to clarify, I mean, I do want to name one of the names because he's a big name in the cannabis industry, but it's Dan Adams, right? He works for the Globe.
Yep.
I follow him. He does produce a lot of material. Most of it, I would say most, if not all of it, I've been behind. But when he tweeted this out, and maybe it was because of our personal relationship and my friendship with Tom, but I really got upset by it because I knew it wasn't coming from the truth or from the fact. It was really just an attack.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, absolutely, it was unfair, and frankly, it was upsetting. Not just to me, and not just to members of the executive team, but to the employees that worked so hard to put together that messaging for the Black Lives Matter movement. They were sad and upset, and that made me even more perturbed. So I look, at Dan is trying to sell newspapers, but I think in this particular case, that was over the line clearly. If
Gary and the team who produced it, I mean, and you guys were so upset, why wasn't there a response? Because it seemed to me that's like, I was all fired up. Like I was ready to just like light it on fire. But, and unfortunately, I think you guys turned off the comment section. So there really was an ability to, at least on that post, because I was trying not to, like, I was looking for a healthy conversation to respond and to reply to, in my mind, was more of an attack than anything based on reality. I really wanted to address it, but you turned off the comments. But why didn't you guys also put out some public statement, or was it just decided you just keep it quiet?
Yeah, so we put out a statement internally to our company that was lengthy and meaningful. Frankly, it's time that Dan Adams and me, or Dan Adams and us, sat down and talked. And I honestly just didn't want to feed into what I thought was a pretty negative comment that really didn't have to do with the other. So I'm looking forward to trying to work on that relationship so that he understands who we are, because I don't think he does. And to just put that out there as a provocateur, and then have us respond to it in a way that may or may not seem sincere, depending on who you are, and then it goes back and forth, I don't see that as being very productive. And we don't respond to a lot of stuff that's out there, because a lot of it is not worthy of a response, frankly. This one was, but I'd like to do that man-to-man, face-to-face, off the record, and really try to figure out what that's all about, because it was really upsetting to me and to my team.
Nothing productive in the comment sections ever. Right?
Yeah. Right.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess. I mean, it's about who's listening, right? So I have to believe he's got a huge audience, right? And this is where I thought it was the most unfair, because he used his platform and his association with the Globe to say something which I thought was a lie.
Yeah.
And I just felt like, oh man, like I want to just, and I just guess, there's no other way to do that except to either email, call, or use social media. And I do believe the social media platform can be extremely effective, as you can see with this. There's a I'm not sure how familiar you are with the Barstool brand or with the Kirk Minahan show, but there's kind of a beef going on right now. And
they have really gotten it going on social media, that's for sure.
So they call the fans of the Kirk Minahan show the Minifans, and they basically created such a campaign against the producer, or I'm sorry, the chief editor of Barstool Sports, which is basically the employer of the Kirk Minahan show.
Right.
They're trying to get that producer canceled because they were spiking a lot of shows or
write-ups and
blogs.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is that the Minifans created such an attack that it became like trending
number one trending
in the nation.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. So there is a voice in comments. There are people listening, and I do believe, with like platforms like this, like a podcast or with social media like Twitter, or even in the comments section, I believe you can really create some social change. So
yeah, it's look at, I'm not shy, and never have been. And again, I would love to state the truth and what I believe every single day. I do try to take advice and counsel from people that are maybe more experienced at the PR and media stuff. And when they say, just let it go, it's a bit of an echo chamber, and all you're going to do is fuel the fire in what could be an unproductive way. I take a few deep breaths and take a walk, take a vape hit, and move on. But I do have a lot of things to talk about with Dan, and I hope we have an opportunity to do that so we can get back to positivity, because he's a smart dude, and he is a voice of the industry, and he's written a lot of awesome things, and he does have a following. So it would be great to try to figure each other out more clearly and honestly, and go from there. So I feel the same way you guys do. I just for this particular circumstance, I was told just let it be for the moment, and try to get maybe a face-to-face.
I can understand. I appreciate that. I feel like I do hope that you get that sit down with Dan. If private, if you want to do it publicly, let's do it on this. Let's do it on this show.
I love it. Let's do one then the other. I love it. Both.
Yeah. So let's move on from that topic. And I was actually, I'm very interested in you personally. I think, we've had a number of unique guests on this show, and I think everyone who's come into the cannabis industry does have a unique background. I know you're an entrepreneur and a person who has helped start a business similar to Tom. Would you mind giving us just a little bit of background as to how you got into cannabis?
Yeah, sure. It was a cocktail party.
Nice.
Where lots of things happen. But
what were you drinking?
Lots, and vodka soda.
There you go.
But I had just sold a company in the digital health space called Constant Therapy. Cool company that was spun out of Boston University that helped people that had had a stroke to regain their cognitive and speech capabilities. Unbelievable application, incredible data, and was helping people dramatically. And so we got acquired by a private equity firm, and they were going to go take it through the FDA process, which I didn't want anything to do with. It takes years, and it's a pain in the ass. And so I was done with that company. This was my 7th company in the Boston area that I've either started or run. And I went to a cocktail party at a golf event. And somebody said, "Hey, you're free. Let me show you a business plan." And it was a cannabis business plan, literally the next day. So I'm 2 weeks out of Constant Therapy.
Who was the person that showed this to you?
A guy named Mark, and he was he was starting a cannabis company that I don't think ever got off the ground. That was the business plan I was looking at. And it was green something, lots of them are green something, but it certainly piqued my curiosity. And the more I thought about this business and the industry, because as much as I enjoyed cannabis, I really didn't think much about it as a business for 35 years after business school. And I looked at it and thought, this is an incredible opportunity, once in a lifetime, $40, $50 billion market that already exists, no technology risk, like my other businesses, most of them were tech, and, you had to build it before you even knew whether it was going to work or anybody was going to like it. And you had to understand, how you're going to price it and all that stuff. Most of that stuff was done in cannabis, and it was really just a matter of taking it from under the table and putting it up on top of the table. So I got really pumped about it. First thing I do when I get interested in the business, and as I try to learn as much as possible, so I flew out to Colorado, spent a week out there.
Who did you meet with in Colorado?
Met with dispensary owners. I didn't have a person that I was out there with. I literally just was shopping and walking around, and I had a couple of people. A guy named or a gal named Meg who was out there and helped me get introduced to a few people. And so the more I learned, the more I got interested. And so I did some due diligence on this particular business plan and found out that it wasn't really going to work out, because the assumptions in there were they were going to get into the business quickly. It was going to become big quickly. It was going to be easy. And suddenly they were going to make $100 million.
So let me ask you a quick question. I'm sorry to stop you, Keith, but when you were saying that you saw something in these business models, or what you saw in Colorado, had it anything to do with from the patient's perspective, or was it only from the business perspective, meaning like the profits and the chances of being able to grow it as a franchise, anything like that?
Yeah. So no, absolutely both. Because again, I didn't know a lot about the medicinal benefits of cannabis until I started doing due diligence. And so the more I talked to people,
you were just a recreational user.
Yeah. I mean, everything crosses over, right? I use cannabis for sleep and relaxation, and frankly, that's as medical as a lot of other uses, right? But the more I found out about how awesome it was to address the maladies that are generally solved, quote unquote, by opioids and other pharmaceuticals or alcohol or other products, the more I got excited about the possibilities. And the more I saw how unbelievable it was that it hadn't been studied or been allowed to be studied. So both sides of it, and the business side of it.
In the U.S., you mean, right?
In the U.S., exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because I think we are always trying to quote from other countries. I think we've done a couple, Israel studies, haven't we?
Yeah, there was one you put out there from Israel, I remember.
Anyway.
Yeah, so I got totally pumped about it. Looked into that particular business. That business wasn't going to be successful, and that turned out to be accurate. But in my due diligence, I met a couple of people from Revolutionary Clinics, and literally within a couple of days, and they said, "Geez, we're interested in the business. We've got a couple of licenses that are in the works, and we're looking for a CEO."
And where were they in terms of the business development of RevClinics at the time? Did they have any stores open? They just had the licenses?
Just licenses. They had 2 licenses in Cambridge and 1 in Somerville, which back then seemed like a really good place to be. We'll talk more about that, I'm sure. And they had a piece of real estate in Fitchburg, 250,000 square foot building that was really ideal for turning into an indoor cultivation and processing facility. So they had the assets that I described. They had raised a little bit of money, and so I came in, and it was my job to turn it into a business.
Are these the Vinings? Just curious, because I know that name is sort of out there as some of the initial people involved in RevClinics.
Jane Vining was the original founder. She had a nonprofit called the Cass Foundation that had, way back when you had to both apply as a vertically integrated player as well as a nonprofit. This was actually kind of rare, because most other people created or made up a nonprofit to meet the guidelines. Jane actually had a nonprofit that was a legit nonprofit that was in operation. So she was a bit ahead of the curve that way, and a marvelous person, by the way. Had a couple of really tragic losses in her family related to opioids and the effects of those. And so she really, really believed in the benefit and the power of cannabis, and she helped me to believe it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the early players. A guy named Brian Anson as well was involved because his family owned the building out in Fitchburg that had at one time been the Cole Haan Shoe Factory,
Mm-hmm.
and they had produced awesome shoes for a generation before all that stuff moved south and then overseas. And so the building was kind of sitting idle. There was a couple of things going on, but it was a really beautiful skeleton, 100 years old. And so we decided that we were going to buy that building, turn it into the cultivation facility, and turn those licenses into the medical facilities that we have today.
Mm-hmm.
So
And how long was that period of time between when you first got introduced at the cocktail party to the time that you're speaking
what were
about?
our date ranges there?
Yeah.
Keith? Sorry.
Just want to know if it's like a year, 2 years, 5 years, 100.
They were probably about a year from having an operational license, meaning that they were able to plant and or open a store.
Mm-hmm.
And those were both happening at the same time. So it was about a year, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, go ahead.
It seems to me, and again, this is just from our, just couple months worth of talking with people who are in this industry, either as consumers or advocates or people who are actually in the business. It seems like that's a very quick amount of time to get, because it sounds to me, and we're talking obviously about this verticalization, right? Where you have to be the grower, right?
Yep.
The supplier and the retail. Like you need all these three. Am I missing a level?
Missing the product piece.
The product, of course, but
manufacture of product.
And that to me is huge investment up front. So it's money. And then obviously, like you said, it's real estate, and it's all the political stuff. But that seems to me a very quick period of time. Did it seem quick to you, or was that a long period of time from start to finish?
Yeah, to clarify, these guys had been working on the licenses in the real estate for 4 years before I got there.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's the amount that it takes a long time to get the licenses, the approvals, the neighbors,
the buy-in, right?
Buy-in, and then the CCC, back then the DPH approvals. When I came in, most of that had been completed, at least for 2 of the stores and for the factory. So it was really just a bit of construction and finalizing plans that had already been laid out in order to get into business. So it is quick. If I just said a year, if you were starting today to do that same thing, it would be 3 years before you got into business. 3 years,
right.
Easy. And that's even that can be quick.
Yeah.
So we built out one floor of this big building and planted our first seeds and started from there. And we had our first sales in early 2018 in our Somerville store. And then we were fooling around with the licenses a little bit. I didn't like a couple of the locations. So you're actually able to move a license from one location to the next with permission of the CCC or the DPH again back then and the city or town that you're in. So we moved one of the locations from Kendall Square over to Central Square, where we have our current store there. And that ended up being a really good move because it's a fabulous location. And that was because Cambridge had changed their zoning and they added Central Square into the zone, whereas before it wasn't in the zone. So a lot of moving parts, really tough, very complicated, very expensive. Back then, and part of the reason why, the industry was dominated by people that had money and had business experience before is because it's incredibly expensive to build an indoor cultivation facility. I mean, it's tens of millions of dollars, not just millions, right?
Yeah.
And the store itself, depending on where you are and what you want it to be, that's easily $1 million, $1.5 million in a couple of years just to do a retail store.
And it sounds to me then so that's the medical, right?
Yeah,
and then a year and a half, 2 years later, when recreational or adult use opened up, it seemed like it provided a little bit more opportunity for some, small businesses or small business minded people to get involved in the cannabis community, correct?
Yeah, for sure. You no longer had to be vertically integrated. So
Right.
the starting check went from $10 million down to $1 million.
Yeah.
So, big difference.
Again, I just need to bring this up because I mean, it's been a common theme in all of our discussions about the inequity of how many of, they call them like, the larger cannabis companies or the corporate cannabis companies or the big cannabis companies versus some of the EEs or the SEs. I mean, the ratio is significantly leaning in one direction, right? I think it's like 193 applicants or licenses to, I don't know, 8 or 9, correct?
Yep, that's about the ratio.
What do you think is the biggest reason for that huge displacement in balance?
Yeah, so it's pretty simple actually. Capital is the biggest cash, right? Capital is the biggest reason, and the biggest hole in the whole program, right? Massachusetts, I think, took a leadership position in having equity as part of their goals and objectives for the programs, and wrote some of that into the rules, regulations, and objectives, but it wasn't funded.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't funded. And so, for me, I had already started or run 6 other businesses, right? And I'd had a couple of really nice successes. So I was able to write a check. I was able to go around to people that I had done well by before. And that's what happened to others as well. If you're brand new to the industry and maybe you'd been participating in the illicit market for a decade, and here you felt this is a big opportunity to get right into the business, I mean, that was huge, except you need a couple of $1 million to make it happen.
Yeah.
And without that financial backing, it just was a pipe dream that it was ever going to happen.
Just to bring some information to the audience. So, getting loans from banks is not able to happen, correct? So people who are private business owners who want to open up a cannabis store in any city or town that's welcoming them, a bank's not going to loan them the money. Is that correct?
Correct. Zero.
So then it has to come from some, I mean, we're talking millions of dollars, right? So really, I mean, no one's got a mattress that big where you're keeping that much cash under. So if you're not going to get it from some bank, so the only other options would be some obviously public fund, which could be available through either the state or taxes or something coming from the cannabis community, or you're basically borrowing money from private people who may or may not want equity in your business, right?
Yeah. So there's no banks whatsoever, and there's also very few, at least back then, funds or dedicated groups that had cannabis funds that were looking for small entrepreneurs to get into the business. It was really high net worth individuals, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was the only access to capital. And I think, again, one of the things that the state, the statute, and then the commission left out, not because they didn't want it, but because it wasn't available, but was this private fund, or this public fund rather. And the only way to solve that is if you take money that's being generated in the industry and you put it into a fund and you allocate it toward that. It's sort of like the, when you're going to build a 20-story building in Boston, you have to put aside some percentage of that for affordable housing. It's an institutional way to take developers' funds and to allocate some of them to lower income individuals that need it. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be in that building. It's the money that needs to be allocated to a fund. It's got somebody managing it, and it actually works quite well. I'm sure there's problems, but it works quite well. That's the model I think they should have come up with in this cannabis business. And frankly, that's the model we tried to present to Cambridge when they decided that they wanted to try to solve, quote unquote, the problem by keeping us out of the business for a period of time.
Right.
So capital and business operations experience are the two big levers that were missing in order to get more equity into the industry.
Just to educate our audience. So you had a number of medical stores open and running in the state, and you were wanting to go recreational or adult use in Cambridge. And the town or the city of Cambridge decided to give a head start, a 2-year window for some of the economical empowerment groups or people from the SE groups to start their businesses ahead, just almost basically just to give them a head start.
That's correct. That's what they laid out. The fact is, 9-10 months later, nothing has happened.
Right.
The only thing that's happened is we're still out of business. Cambridge doesn't have the employees that are working at these stores. The tax revenue that Cambridge would have generated and could have put into a fund for the economic empowerment candidates that they were claiming to try to help is going to Brookline and Lowell and Salem and all these other places. So 9 months later, nothing's happened. There aren't a lot of hammers swinging, getting these stores open. So the way I look at it, it's like, we wanted to buy a double-decker home in Cambridge with the clear understanding that we were going to live upstairs and we were going to rent the lower level to whomever would pay the rent. And so we went to the state and we made sure that was okay. And they said, thumbs up, it's okay. We went to the city. We said, that's okay. They said, thumbs up, okay. We made the investment. We built out the house. We put up the for rent sign and they said, take it down for 2 years. And we said, why? They said, well, we'd like to give somebody else the opportunity down the street to maybe have a head start. And I'm like, I would actually not be okay with that, but you had to tell me before I wrote the check for the house.
Money down, right?
Right.
Yep.
And so you're taking away my rights and what you told me flat out face to face, as well as on paper, that was going to be in place. And that's just not fair. It's got nothing to do with race. It's got nothing to do with us versus them. It's simply
that's the spine of a bad business deal when you're not communicating properly. Unfortunately, it's mired in public policy and other problems.
Yeah,
Keith, it's interesting because we weren't asking questions about race, but you brought up race, and why is that? Why all of a sudden did you were going through kind of the business model, and why just the town wasn't allowing it, and they put that, say, nope, take down the for sale sign, and then you automatically went to race. Why is that?
Well, that's what it became in the public forum, at the city council meetings and in the public discourse. It was that somehow Cambridge had come up with this new idea to solve the problem of not enough economic empowerment people in the business, and they were doing it with the hammer of keeping us out. And frankly, that's a false narrative, because again, 9 months later, nothing has happened as I described to them it would.
What's the true narrative?
The true narrative is that it was political. There were a couple of people that felt that they would do well politically if they stood up and made the case that they were going to do something, quote unquote, above and beyond what the state had done to promote equity, right? And
so you're talking about what, city councilors or people who were listening to the case? Yep,
city councilors and other people that are politically active felt that this would be beneficial in the conversation.
And what was the community saying? Because I guess that's the other side that always comes up in all of our conversations. It's about the community. Like we just had Stephen Mandelian, and his community obviously is the veterans. And we had Mike, who you well know from the Young Jerks, on a couple times, and we do really like those guys, and we do think that they do provide a voice for this community, even though it's not the voice that everyone agrees with all the time. And obviously their style is very unique.
A couple of different voices with those.
Yeah. But did you hear what I was saying? This is where I go on my tangents, and this is where I edit them out.
So no. Why did the conversation go there? I
Oh,
think,
yeah. I'm sorry. If you can finish that thought.
I think it was political, and then it was political, and so what we tried to do is like, wait a minute, one day I'm sitting in front of the city council, and they're like, okay, we're going to open it up, and here's how we're going to do it, and you're part of it, and literally the next day I found out that we weren't part of it, and so, we said, what are you trying to solve for here? And they said, well, we want to give more opportunity to the economic empowerment folks. So we said, well, let's not just get upset and jump up and down and sue people. Let's go talk to them. So I went out with my team, and we talked to everybody we could get in front of that would listen, and said, what are your issues? Like, so there were some real cool folks trying to get into this business with all good intent, and they said, we need capital, we need operational training. We need somebody to provide us with these standard operating procedures, which are like 2 feet, deep once you get through them all to meet the regulations. And we're like, we can do that, right? We can do all of that, and in a big way. And so we got together with them, we held hands, and we came together with a proposal that was, at the time, maybe still is, but at the time was the biggest grant fund created in the cannabis industry to assist minorities, economic empowerment candidates, equity candidates.
So was it some sort of interest-free loan or money they can pay back over time, or was it some level of equity in the companies that you lent the money to? How did that work business-wise? I'm just wondering what, from your angle, why. I mean, I get it. It felt great to be able to be there and to support them.
Yeah.
But from a business perspective, what was that angle?
Yeah. So what we did was we created a grant fund. That means a grant is you give the money away. It's not paid back. There is no interest. There is no return. It's really just I'm gonna win, and so I'm gonna help you win as well at the same time. And so the fund ended up. We had 4 companies that were participating. The fund was $7.5 million, and it was to be paid about half upfront, which was terrifically needed and really important to people that were just about to sign leases and to start construction. And then the rest of it was going to be paid after about a year. Okay. And that came with consulting and operational experience and inventory, interest-free shelf, filling the shelves and so forth. So it was a very comprehensive program. I was really proud of it, frankly. And the people that were thinking about it felt very strongly as well. So we had, I'm going to say 4 out of the 5 groups that were vocal in Cambridge, that were EEs or social equity, were with us and wanted this fund to happen. And it was incredibly unfortunate that the city council, and again, some people that were sort of working with them, decided that they would go with the 2-year moratorium, and they basically torched this fund, this $7.5 million fund. And people say to me today, oh, well, you're still going to, write that check. I'm like, with what? No, we're now 9 months behind in our business. And you guys should know that it's very hard to make a dime in the medical market. There's only 65,000 patients. They're beautiful people, and we love them, and we serve many of them. But at the end of the day, there's only 65,000 in the entire state. There's 6.7 million people.
So you said, though, there was 4 out of the 5 groups wanted to be in this with you. There was a group that wasn't. There was a business. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, there was a couple of guys and a business that were fighting against it for sure.
Yeah, and I actually just remembered my point. It was about community. So I was wondering, was there any feedback from the actual community, from the city and the people of Cambridge, the taxpayers, on whether they wanted to have the EE groups get a head start, or you guys? Did it matter?
No, look at Cambridge voted like 72% in favor of adult use cannabis just to get it open, right? Like 4 years ago or 3 years ago, whatever it was. The community has been very supportive. Our neighbors in Central Square and over at Fresh Pond, the organizations that we've helped fund and donate to. We've got over 70% of our employees are minority and female in Cambridge. We've helped the veterans, the homeless, in addition to African American communities and charities. Margaret Fuller House being one of them that we really love, believe in what they do, and help them out and hire people through their network. So the community is fabulous all around. This was really a political job here.
Yeah. So how much money do you think you've lost in the 9 months this has been going on, between lost revenue and even how much you're paying? You know, I know how expensive lawyers can
just
be.
the legal fees alone for all.
Yeah. So how much money overall?
Yeah. Well, there's a cannabis premium on everything, guys, right? And that's part of the problem. Like if you go into a landlord and you say, hey, I want to rent the business and you're going to be a restaurant, here's your lease rate. You're cannabis? Oh, multiply that by 3. So again, it makes it harder to get into the business.
Sounds like Tom. That's what Tom said.
So,
word for word.
Well, Tom and I, he's fabulous, right?
He's a big fan of yours too.
Well, talk about a guy who really cares about equity, who cares about the community, who works his ass off.
Yeah,
for
big heart,
very little money, big heart. I mean, just love the guy. Anyway, so the community was really with us on that. And how much money have we lost?
Yeah.
So define lost. We probably, if you have a recreational store, it does 5 to 7 times as much revenue as a medical store, right? Just because of the math.
For volume, right?
For volume, right? And so for our 2 stores, we happen to have 2 stores out of the 3 that we can possibly have in Cambridge. That's going to be a couple of $1 million a month per store. So $4 million a month times 9 months. Do the math. You bring about 10% to the bottom line. And depending on how your expenses are, so a lot of money.
Yeah. So just to get back to the race thing, because again, it's sad that that's where it has to go, because I mean, I understand there's obviously we're dealing with a huge, just climate of unfairness. And the reason why they were saying that your company or your organization is racist, because why? Like why are they labeling RevClinics as a company that doesn't believe in, any, like they want discrimination or racism, like
racial
what?
equality. They don't believe in racial equality.
It's really just the fact that we stood up for our rights in Cambridge, and we were the ones that said, look, we're not going to sort of lay back for 2 years and let this happen to us. We have a vacant floor on this double decker, and we should have the right to open. So we did decide to sue. You should know, and most people do, that explicitly in our suit against the city, we said we do not want to cancel the ordinance in Cambridge because it might slow down the economic empowerment candidates who are in queue, many of whom I know and love. We want to make sure that we do not get in the way of them moving as quickly as possible. That's explicitly in our language in our suit. But once we pulled the trigger and decided to do that, it gave room for people that were either believing or were political also to throw stones. But
Keith,
that's what happens when you're in the arena. If you're not in the arena, no stones are thrown at you. If you're in the arena and you're fighting, you get a little blood on your face, a little dust on your clothes. It's just the way it is.
And Keith, just for the naysayers and the folks in the back, it's pretty easy to find the documentation about the fund that you and those partners set up, I would imagine. Yeah, pretty easy to kind of research if anybody wants to really research that and kind of Google that up, so to speak.
Absolutely. Yeah, simple. I'll send it to them.
Good to know. Good to know. Easy to find, I'm sure. Just again, I encourage folks to do their research and kind of look into some of these things versus just reading a headline or seeing a clickbait article, so to speak.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And look at now there's really only a couple of economic empowerment stores that are open, right?
There's 2, right? There's Colby Evans.
Yeah,
and then there's STEM that just opened up.
STEM did. That's in
Haverhill.
And then there's social equity down in Caroline's Cannabis.
Oh,
down-
Caroline's, right, in Uxbridge, right? Is that where that is?
Yeah. And that is a shame. But the reason for that, as I stated before, is really more about capital and business support than anything else. There are certainly big out-of-state players, out-of-country players that have come in, and I totally get that people would prefer that didn't happen. Maybe they should have written rules to prevent that, but they didn't. We happen to, we're sort of grouped with the big cannabis guys, but look at, I grew up in Watertown, right? On the streets of Watertown,
The mean streets of Watertown.
Well, they were way back when.
I'm sure they were.
Eric's hung out in Watertown.
Yeah, I had a property there. I had a 2-family there for about 10 years.
I mean, we
Love it. I love Watertown. Actually, the Kirk Minahan show is the studio is taped in Watertown.
That's true. Yeah. We used to dust it up with the boys from Waltham and Belmont, with the rich kids, and we were the other side of the tracks, and so that's where I grew up, and I got lucky, and by the way, totally privileged, right? My parents were white, and they were, they were sort of middle class people, and I feel very, very lucky. But I worked my ass off, right, to get into college. I worked my ass off to get into business school. I worked my ass off to run the businesses that I ran. Nobody handed me anything, and our company was built in Massachusetts by Massachusetts people. Mm-hmm. So we grew. Would be much larger if we didn't have these issues, but we grew by hard work and local capital for the most part here in Massachusetts. So
how hard do you think it's going to be? Because I do believe there is some level of hurt or injury to your brand because of this message. How what's it going to take, do you think, to sort of fix this? And maybe even heal some of the, I don't know if you want to call it like bad blood or sort of bridge between the people that are saying these things and you guys.
Yeah. So I really appreciate the question, and it's a real issue. All as we can do is be the best that we can be and be as genuine as we can be, living our corporate social responsibility, and to be productive and helpful members of the community, and especially the African-American community. And that's what we do every day. And over time, people will begin to turn around and say, why would you say that about those guys? Right? That's not who they are. And that's really the best way to do it. I could put out 100 press releases, and I could write a check, that might be nice, but might be shallow by way of its meaning. Every single day, we are living our brand, and we're a good company. We're a good place to work. We're good corporate citizens. We do care about equity, and we've already helped 3 economic empowerment candidates in the industry move forward significantly. So that's what we can do.
How many employees do you currently have working for RevClinics?
A couple hundred.
Awesome.
Yeah. When I joined, we had, I think, 15. So it's been a crazy ride. Hardest thing I've ever done. At times it feels harder than it should be, and a bit unfair, but frankly, it steels us to be even better and fight even harder for what we believe in, and to be a good corporate citizen.
Keith, as CEO, how much innovation are you personally exposed to with different products to use? You mentioned the vape. Obviously, that's old technology, but there's new things happening all the time, and I would imagine you've got some pretty privy knowledge on some cool stuff. How much do you bring into your world or not?
Yeah. So we have a lot of exciting things going on, some of which are already on the shelf, some of which are in development, but I would point to 2 or 3 things. One is Astaria is one of our sub brands that is a sleep product. So it incorporates CBN along with CBD and THC into vape and edible products and a drink that just mellows you out to the point where you just close your eyes and you go right to sleep. So that's really cool because sleep is a huge deal, right? I mean, walk into CVS and, a third of the shelves have something to do with trying to make you go to sleep. Then we have Stir It Up. And this is one of my favorites because, I like my cocktails and sometimes too much.
Welcome to the party.
Yeah. And so Stir It Up is a squirt drink that is flavored and is THC based and has a beautiful combination of cannabinoids and flavors. And it's almost like having a nice glass of wine by way of its effect, but no calories, no hangover, no booze, and it homogenizes with the mix. Like I have some in my soda water right now, which is pretty awesome. And
basically, you're describing it like if it's one of those like iced tea little high concentrated liquids, you just squirt it into your mix.
That's it, exactly. There's lots of beverages are coming, right, in cannabis. But
Coffees, flavors,
once you get into the bottling business, it's a lot of equipment, it's a lot of inventory, it's a lot of disposable stuff. Why not just create what we've created called Stir It Up and spread it into what you already have. And the third, which is incredibly exciting, and we launched this about 3 months ago, is called Foreplay. And this is our.
I like the sound of that.
It's a sex chocolate.
I was going to ask you, is it some sort of topical lubricant?
No. This is like you ingest it. It's a lovely chocolate with 5 nutraceuticals that are non-cannabis related that we searched around. We had a pharmacologist search around the world for, and stuff that increases your blood flow, enhances your libido, a little bit of well-being,
aphrodisiac action, eh? Okay.
Little Spanish fly in there.
Yeah, exactly. Horny goat weed.
Horny goat weed.
And add a little THC and CBD in there.
Right.
And I mean, I'm not. My wife will kill me to tell you more, but let me tell you that it works. And we had a pretty big beta program that went on, which was a ton of fun. And 9 people out of 10, and this is for men and for women, by the way,
had the best orgasms of their life. Is what you're trying to say.
Holy it's like burns on your knees type of orgasm, right?
Okay.
So anyway, so those are 3.
We'll have to get some free samples, just to see.
You got it, buddy.
Yeah, thank you.
But
you've got Eric's interest. You've definitely perked Eric's interest at this point.
We had a lunch party and we hired a sex therapist, and we said, we obviously want this to be successful. We're going to give you some free samples, and we want you to do your thing. And so she spent a month working with it, and I met her at the lunch party.
Prescribing it to her patients.
No, she was doing it on her own.
Oh, personally, I got you.
Yeah, personally, and she came in, and I've never heard a better recommendation for anything in my life. And she's like a little Dr. Ruth gal. She's fabulous, and
nice.
So it really works, and it's something we're really proud of. And we've got a bunch of other stuff coming that will be both tasty and fun.
Okay, last weed question. When you're taking that walk and you're de-stressing after that, that shitty article that got written, what's that vape that you're hitting, Keith?
So I like the AC/DC 1-to-1 sort of full spectrum.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen that before. Okay, cool.
Sativa dominant, and it's just uplifting, and it takes a little bit of the weight off the shoulders, and that's all you need, right?
But you're still very, very conscious, very, very.
It's not knocking you out, and I'm fine to be knocked out also, by the way. But by way of
no, that's the one. Yeah, that's the one. Right. You're not numbing out the anguish. You're just focusing it for a minute. Got it.
Bingo. You got it. Exactly. A lot of fun.
Keith, we've had you for almost an hour. I think we've learned so much from you, and again, we couldn't appreciate your time enough. I think this is something that we talk about a lot, but Scott and I, we're relationship guys, and we all have the same goal. When we talk to Mike, and we talk to you, and we talk to Steve, and our goal really is to sort of make cannabis what it can be, right? We really do believe in its potential. Yeah. I hope that, like I said, I hope you and Dan get a chance to get together, because I really do think it was really unfair. I hate the phrase. I hate the label. man, it just seemed to me was really unfair for them to put that on you guys. So I really do hope you have the conversation.
We'll keep holding hands with those. We'll keep holding hands with those wild young jerks as well.
Yeah, and would you go on their show? Just curious, because I know that Mike would love to have you on. He had a whole 2-hour show just on what he would like to ask you. You know, so
oh, is that right?
Yeah, would you go on their show?
I don't know. Probably. I didn't really know him very well, and I didn't pay attention to the show, and it's been kind of busy. But you know, I think probably that would be smart for us to get together and chat as well.
Yeah.
I have no fears about that sort of stuff, and I think, you know, getting to know people and understanding each other, whether you're in agreement or not, is always the best thing.
Yeah, I think if anything, we can at least partner the introduction a little bit.
Totally.
It doesn't have to be a serious interview, but at least just the introduction, I think, is always going to be helpful.
Yeah. We could also be a neutral ground. We can have you and Dan Adam, and then we can have you and Young Jerks on. We'll just referee the whole thing.
Balance this whole freaking.
But again, you know, I just want to say 3 things that I know that the common most 3 things that we hear about during this whole discussion. We talk about, you know, the inequity. We talk about access. We talk about price. I do believe we all have a personal responsibility to be able to, you know, use all those words to help one another. You know, I'm a capitalist, so I do understand corporate and profits. We're both small business owners, but I do, being a patient myself and having had the experience talking with that population, I do know how, like you said, like, I mean, it's an amazing plant that can do amazing things for a lot of people. So, you know, I think we all just could keep working on those things, keep having the conversation to feel how we can help solve this, you know.
Love it. Eric and Scott, really appreciate it.
All right, Keith, take care. Have a great night.
Thank you, Keith.
You too, sir.
No problem. All right, take care.
So for me, you know, I always walk away with like one, like kind of like major leverage point in all of this. And you know, I want to hear what fucking Grant has to say and Mike and all the other folks out there. I think the biggest question for me is if Cambridge kind of changes how the game is played after the investments are made, how are you going to call them out about that? That's something that's significant. And again, I have to hear more. I got to research.
You're saying the $7.5 million fund?
They make their no. The $7.5 million fund was set up as another idea.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is they made their investments, they did their thing, but as Keith was saying, they set the playing field, and then all of a sudden it was, wait, no, now we need to do this with the economic empowerment stuff, socioeconomic empowerment stuff. So for me, I want to kind of, if that's what he's saying, if what he's saying is true, and it was sort of changed after the fact, and then all of a sudden now they get called out, I have an issue with that, because again, I'd like to approach this like there does need to be somewhat of a mediation. I trust your role. I trust what you say. Like, if I'm going to give you this much money, this millions of dollars, it's going to go in the direction that you told me it was going to go in.
Yeah. You
can't change the direction after I've made the investment.
Yeah. No, I mean, I hear exactly what you're saying. I think to me, I just, you know, having spoken to Tom multiple times, we're not talking about just, you know, on our show that we weren't able to air, but like, and talking with Keith, you know, like I can understand, I can appreciate both of their perspectives, which is basically they stand behind their truth, right? So they believe they're doing a good job. They obviously have been able to develop a company with 300 plus employees. I was blown away by you know, he said 70% in the Cambridge stores are either African-American women or something. Like so I mean, I really do believe in action, and not just what people say, because obviously when people say things, you can look those things up, but like action matters too. And I think it's just, we have to do a little bit more education on ourselves to learn some more facts. Obviously we've heard both sides of the story here. But my gut tells me these are good guys. These are really good guys that want to do well.
Yeah. I think either way, we have a pretty interesting sort of argument or setup of what's happening here. And I think that, like most things, people are reading the first few lines of articles or the titles of the headlines of articles and things like that, or they're seeing again Twitter 140 characters or whatever you're allowed to do for how many words you can put to Twitter now, but it there's a lot of like you can make quick takes and quick comments and get a rally going, and well, hold on a minute, they changed this happened this way, this was this, and it goes for both sides of course too. I don't think any of this, what we're saying at all, takes away from the fact that some equity and some leveling of the playing field still needs to be done.
Yeah.
I think that something we should probably also be looking at the state and these cities as well.
Yeah. All right. Wow. That was a lot.
Yeah. Trying to fucking get high and prescribe weed to people. Fucking it up.
We'll get my dad on. Talk about his weed.
We definitely will add some. We're gonna have to throw a few weed segments in the future.
I know.
Sure. Calm my nerves. put us back on a level playing field.
Yeah, we apologize. It's been pretty intense, but again, we're enjoying the conversation, and so
it's an interesting one. It's good.
Yeah. All right, guys. Peace. Thanks for hanging with us.
Super Lemon Haze.
Super Lemon Haze, motherfuckers.
What is this?
Is it over?
We're running out of time.
I don't want to hear your excuses. No, it's not fair. Where'd all the files go?